coin number 1 takes us deep into the heart of World War II, because in your hands, you may be holding a 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny that doesn't look like much at first glance. In fact, this one has that dark, almost black shade that so many collectors overlook. The surface looks aged, worn, and softened from decades of circulation. Most people would pass it by without a second thought. But that's where the magic happens, because the 1944 Wheat Penny, even in fine condition, carries mysteries that can turn a simple pocket piece into a jaw-dropping treasure. Let's start with what makes the 1944 penny so interesting. This coin was supposed to be struck in regular bronze, made of copper, tin, and zinc. But as America was coming out of the 1943 steel penny experiment, when the mint used steel because copper was needed for ammunition, some leftover steel planchets remained in the machines. And because of that simple mistake, a tiny handful of 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on steel. Those mistakes are some of the most sought-after error coins in US history. Now, your coin shows that deep black shade. And that's important. Many steel pennies turn dark over time, especially when they age inside old storage boxes, basements, or humid areas. Bronze pennies usually turn brown, red-brown, or dark brown, but steel pennies can oxidize into a darker, almost black tone. And that's where the thrill begins, because even in fine condition, a 1944 steel penny can bring a value that leaves collectors stunned. But let's slow down and look at yours more closely. In fine condition, the details on Lincoln's hair and coat are soft, but still visible. The date, 1944, stands clear, and the lettering across the rim stands strong enough to read without struggle. The wheat stalks on the reverse are worn, but not flat, showing just enough definition to remind us how long this coin has traveled. This kind of wear tells a story. A coin touched by workers, soldiers, families, and generations who never imagined it might one day be worth a fortune. Now, let's talk value, because this is where the wow factor hits hard. A regular, 1944, bronze penny in fine condition is normally worth a few cents, maybe $1 or $2 to a collector. But if this coin, even with its dark, blackened surface, turns out to be struck on steel, the value jumps from pocket change to the kind of price collectors chase for a lifetime. A confirmed 1944 steel penny, even in worn condition, has sold for over $110,000. And that's the low end. In higher grades, these coins have hit $350,000, $450,000, and some estimates push them beyond $500,000. For the cleanest examples, imagine that a penny most people throw away, suddenly worth more than a luxury home. So, how can someone identify a valuable 1944 steel penny? The first test is simple: a magnet. If your coin sticks, that's your first big clue. The second key is color. Steel can naturally turn dark or black over decades, exactly like the shade on the coin you describe. And third, weight. Steel pennies weigh about 2.7 grams, compared to the 3.11 grams of bronze. And remember, even damaged, scratched, or aged errors still bring massive value, because the rarity is incredibly extreme. So yes, your 1944 black shade, fine condition penny could be one of those dream coins hiding in plain sight. And trust me, collectors will pay shocking amounts to own one of these wartime mistakes. Now, let's move on to a coin that looks innocent, almost ordinary, but hides one of the most shocking secrets in the entire Lincoln Wheat Penny series. I'm talking about the 1935 penny. And in fine condition, your coin tells a long story. The softness in Lincoln's hair, the gentle wear across the cheek and jawline, the wheat stalks on the back showing honest age. This is a coin that has lived through the Great Depression, World War II, and more than 8 decades of American history. But don't let the simple look fool you, because the 1935 wheat penny has some rare varieties and errors that can explode in value. Even when the coin looks well worn, your fine condition example shows clear legends, a readable date, and just enough detail to make the fields look original. This is exactly the kind of condition where hidden errors slip by unnoticed for years. And trust me, The 1935 year holds one error so surprising that collectors will pay staggering amounts to secure one. Let's set the stage. In 1935, the U.S. Mint was working hard to keep up with demand after the worst years of the Depression. Machines ran long hours, dies were overused, and quality control wasn't as strict as we see today. Because of that, several rare minting mistakes were created, some so dramatic that they now belong to the six-figure club. One of the most famous errors from this year is the 1935 double die obverse. On this variety, the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "in God we trust" show dramatic doubling, thick, strong, bold impressions that jump out at you. And here's the shocking part: even worn examples, even dark, scratched, or fine-grade coins, can sell for life-changing prices. A confirmed 1935 double die in low grades can reach $12,000 to $20,000, while nicer examples easily climb beyond $80,000. The rarest high-grade pieces? They have sold in the $350,000 to $500,000 range, when the doubling is bold and undamaged. That's $500,000 for a penny. But that's not the only power the 1935 penny holds. There are also off-center strikes, tilted dies, early die break varieties, and even wrong planchet errors. These pieces sometimes show raised metal lines, cracks, or strange distortions around the rim. And because the 1930s minting process wasn't perfectly consistent, many small errors slip through unnoticed. A dramatic off-center with clear date can hit $5,000 to $15,000. A wrong planchet 1935 penny extremely rare can rocket beyond $200,000 depending on the metal it was struck on. What makes the 1935 penny so dangerous and so exciting is that many of these errors remain hidden in fine condition coins, exactly like the one you described. When a coin is heavily circulated, doubling can soften. Die cracks can blend into the worn fields. A wrong planchet strike might only reveal itself through weight or color, and that's where collectors can easily miss something priceless. Your coin, with its fine grade and even wear, is exactly the sort of piece an inexperienced collector might toss aside. But a serious collector looks closer. A flashlight, a magnifier, and a slow, careful look at the numbers and letters can reveal doubling or distortions that could turn the simple 1935 penny into a lottery ticket. So yes, even in fine condition, the 1935 penny remains one of the most thrilling years to investigate. It carries a sense of mystery, an air of what if, and the real possibility that a tiny mistake made nearly 90 years ago could still be sitting in your hand, waiting to be discovered. Moving on to our next discovery, we arrive at a coin that many collectors think they already understand, but very few truly do. Your 1945D Lincoln Wheat Penny, in bad condition, may look like nothing more than a worn-out piece of copper. The surface is dark, the details are soft, the fields show heavy wear, and the edges have lived through decades of handling. A coin like this usually ends up at the bottom of a jar or tossed into a box of junk pennies that nobody pays attention to. But the 1945D is a coin that deserves a very, very close look. Because this year, especially from the Denver Mint, hides some of the most surprising and high-value wartime errors ever discovered. Let's take a moment to understand the story behind it. This penny was struck during the final year of World War II. The U.S. Mint was pushing out coins as fast as it could. Machines were old, dies were overused, and quality control was not what we expect today. As soldiers were returning home and industry was shifting back to peacetime production, strange things began happening at the Mint. Things that today create some of the most valuable pennies ever found. Your 1945D, even in bad condition, shows the classic signs of long circulation. Lincoln's hair melted into the field, the cheek and jaw worn flat, and the wheat stalks on the reverse barely visible. The rim might show bumps, scratches, maybe even discoloration. But here's the shocker: bad condition does not remove the possibility of huge value. In fact, many major 1945D errors remain extremely valuable even when the coin looks rough, One of the most shocking varieties for this year is the 1945D over S mint mark error. This happened when a die meant for the San Francisco Mint was repurposed for Denver, leaving traces of an S underneath the D even when this error appears on heavily worn coins. Collectors lose their minds because it is so extremely rare. A damaged example can still reach $5,000 to $15,000, while a cleaner one can surpass $40,000. The highest grade examples push deep into six figures, with estimates soaring toward $250,000 to $300,000. But that's just the beginning. The 1945D also has dramatic die break errors, sometimes called cuds, where a chunk of the die broke off and left raised metal blobs on the coin. These can appear near the rim, across the reverse wheat stalks, or even near Lincoln's portrait. A major die break, even on a heavily circulated coin, can bring $3,000 to $25,000 depending on size and placement. The larger the cud, the more collectors fight over it. Now here comes the real lightning strike. Wrong planchet errors from 1945D. These are some of the rarest pennies in the entire wheat series. A few examples were struck on foreign planchets or leftover experimental metal discs. These coins can weigh less or more than normal, appear darker or lighter, and sometimes show unusual edges. These mistakes, tiny, almost impossible to detect without close examination, can explode in value. A genuine wrong planchet 1945D can range from $75,000 all the way up to $450,000 plus, depending on metal type and condition. Even a rough, beat-up example can still sell for a shocking price, because rarity matters far more than appearance, and this is why your coin, in bad condition, still matters. Collectors love 1945D errors because they are unpredictable. They show up suddenly in rolls, in inherited collections, in dusty jars that haven't been touched in 40 years. And because most people dismiss low-grade pennies, the most valuable examples often go unnoticed for decades until an experienced eye takes a closer look. Now, let's move on to a coin that almost everyone overlooks, a coin so common looking that most people would walk right past it without a second glance. Your 1950s Lincoln Wheat Penny, in no fine, heavily worn condition, is exactly the type of coin that hides the biggest surprises. The fields are dull, the lettering is fading, Lincoln's hair has almost melted into the background, and the wheat stalks on the back might be barely visible. Most collectors would simply toss it in a cheap, bulk wheat penny bag. But that's where the story gets interesting. Because the 1950s holds some of the most underrated, most shocking errors in the entire post-war era. Let's begin with what this coin represents. The year 1950 was the beginning of America's economic boom after World War II. Production was fast, demand was high, and the San Francisco Mint, marked by that little S under the date, was under serious pressure to pump out millions of coins. When things move fast at the mint, mistakes happen. And 1950s mistakes aren't just minor. Some of them are jaw-dropping. Even in rough, no fine condition, your coin still carries the full outline of Lincoln's portrait. The fields look stressed, the color may have darkened over decades, and the rim might be smooth from thousands of hands passing it around. A coin like this has lived a full life, and somewhere along that journey, an extremely rare minting error may be hiding beneath the wear. One of the most famous surprises of the 1950s penny is the repunched mint mark, often called the RPM. During this time, mint marks were punched into the die by hand, and sometimes the worker misaligned the S, causing it to be stamped more than once. Some RPMs show the S shifted slightly to the north, east, or west. Others show a strong secondary S punching through underneath the main one. Even in rough condition, collectors love these varieties because they tell the story of mint workers manually correcting mistakes on the dies. A strong RPM variety can still sell for $150 to $600 in low grade, and well over $10,000 to $25,000 in higher grades. Rare ones push beyond $75,000, but the real explosion comes from the ultra-rare 1950s over SSSS varieties triple punched mint marks. These mistakes are so extreme that collectors treat them like treasures. A heavily worn example still finds buyers willing to pay $3,000 to $9,000. And mid-grade versions rocket past $40,000 to $75,000. The largest, boldest spreads have sold for over $150,000, with rumors of private sales reaching $300,000 plus in premium sets. That's not all. The 1950s also has off-metal planchet strikes, where pennies were accidentally struck on leftover foreign coins the mint was producing at the time. Some were struck on planchets meant for coins of Cuba, Mexico, or even Panama, which the U.S. Mint assisted with during this period. These wrong planchet 1950s pennies are extreme rarities, and even with heavy wear, they can still bring $75,000 to $250,000. High-grade, authenticated examples. Those can push past $500,000, making them some of the most valuable wheat pennies ever found. And here's the shocking part. Wrong planchet errors often look completely ordinary at first glance. They blend in. They survive circulation. They get ignored because people think, oh, it's just a beat-up penny. But these coins can weigh slightly differently, maybe lighter, maybe heavier, and they often show strange color tones, reddish, yellowish, or even grayish. Exactly the kind of unusual color you might notice on a worn 1950s like yours. Now, let's turn our attention to a coin from the mid-1950s, a year many collectors take for granted, but one that hides some of the most shocking and unexpected minting mistakes ever recorded. Your 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny, in bad condition, is exactly the type of coin most people ignore. The surface looks worn down, Lincoln's cheek and jaw are smooth, the hair blends into the field, and the wheat stalks on the reverse might be barely visible. The color may be darkened by time, scratches may cover the surface, and the rim might have lost its crisp edges decades ago. But don't let this worn appearance fool you, because 1956 is one of those years that can produce unbelievable value if the right error is hiding under that damage. The 1950 seconds were a period of high speed production at the U.S. Mint. Machines were running fast, dies were out quickly, and quality control sometimes struggled to keep up. And when production numbers rise, so does the chance of mistakes. Some of those mistakes from 1956 turned into legendary rarities. Your penny, even in bad condition, carries the full character of a coin that saw years of circulation. It probably passed through hundreds of hands, lived through the early years of the Cold War, survived the switch from silver coins in the 1960s, and somehow found its way to you today. And during that journey, it may have been hiding something that only a careful eye could ever notice. One of the biggest reasons collectors hunt 1956 pennies is the repunched mintmark RPM varieties, especially the D over D errors on the 1956D. These occur when the mint worker punched the D mintmark more than once in slightly different positions. Even extremely worn examples, coins with heavy damage, still command real, shocking value. A rough low-grade RPM 1956D can bring $75 to $250, while mid-grade examples jump to $1,000, and the strongest bold RPMs have sold for $20,000 to $45,000. In high mint state grades, the most dramatic RPMs have reached $75,000 to $150,000. But that's just the warm-up. The real shockers come from double die errors. While not as common as the famous 1955 double die, the 1956 double dies, especially those with strong spread on Liberty or In God We Trust, are extremely valuable. These coins can show thick, shadow-like doubling around the letters and numbers. In worn condition, the doubling may look faint, blended, or softened, but it still matters. A strong double die in bad condition can still sell for $5,000 to $15,000, while sharper examples leap into the $40,000 to $120,000 range. The rarest confirmed varieties push beyond $200,000, especially when found with clean fields and strong spread. But the biggest value bomb of all, the kind that turns collectors pale, comes from wrong planchet 1956 pennies. The U.S. Mint in the 1950s produced coins for several foreign nations, including planchets of different metals and weights. Every once in a great while, a leftover foreign planchet ended up under the Lincoln die. A 1956 penny struck on a foreign metal might look grayish, yellowish, unusually light, unusually heavy, or just off compared to normal copper coins. Even heavily worn, these oddball pieces are monsters in the marketplace. A confirmed 1956 wrong planchet strike can bring $75,000, $150,000, $250,000, and in rare cases of uncommon metals, private sales have pushed close to $500,000. Now, we move on to one of the most misunderstood coins in the entire Wheat Penny series, the 1944D Lincoln Wheat Penny, and yours is in bad condition. At first glance, your coin looks like something anyone would toss into a junk drawer or a 1-cent bin at a flea market. The surface is dull, maybe darkened from age, with scratches, bumps, and wear that has flattened Lincoln's cheek and softened the wheat ears on the back. The D mint mark may even look faint or distorted from years of circulation. But this simple, worn-out little coin carries one of the biggest what-if mysteries in American coin collecting. And if the right error is hiding inside your coin, even in terrible condition, the value can skyrocket into life-changing territory. To understand why this coin is so thrilling, we have to go back to the end of World War II. The mint had just finished the famous 1943 steel penny run the year before. Millions of steel pennies were struck to save copper for the war effort. But in 1944, the mint returned to copper, and this is where things got messy. A few leftover steel planchets from 1943 accidentally got mixed into production lines in 1944. And at the Denver Mint, this created one of the rarest, most shocking pennies ever discovered. This is the legendary 1944D steel penny, a coin so rare that only a small handful exist. And here's the heart-stopping truth. A genuine 1944D steel penny, even in terrible condition, even scratched or bent, can be worth $250,000 to over $450,000. High-grade examples? They've sold for more than $1 million. Now, I'm not saying your coin is one of those, but this is exactly why every 1944D, even a bad one, deserves careful attention. Your coin being in poor shape doesn't eliminate the possibility of rare errors. In fact, most major error coins circulated heavily because nobody knew they were special when they were first released. Your 1944D may have unusual color, strange weight, or steel-like magnetic pull if it's one of the ultra-rare off-metal strikes. Even a slight difference in tone, a grayish tint, instead of copper red, can hint at something massive. But the steel error isn't the only jackpot tied to 1944D. This year also produced dramatic repunched mint marks, where the D was punched into the die twice. On a worn coin, this can look like a shadow, a bump, or a strange doubling around the mint mark. Even rough examples can bring $200 to $2,000, while stronger varieties in moderate grades climb beyond $25,000, and the most dramatic RPMs approach $75,000 to $100,000. There are also notable die breaks, sometimes forming thick raised lines or blobs along the rim or across Lincoln's portrait. Collectors love large cuds, and even worn ones can bring $1,000 to $10,000, with bigger dramatic ones reaching $20,000 plus. And we can't forget off-center strikes. A 1944D struck 20-40 off-center with the visible date can easily sell for $5,000 to $15,000, even in rough condition. The more dramatic the shift, the higher the price. But here's what makes the 1944D especially exciting. A major error on this coin does not need good condition. A steel planchet, a double mint mark, a wrong metal, a giant cud. All of these sell based on rarity, not beauty. Your coin's bad condition actually tells a story. It lived through decades of use, passed through hands during a time when people weren't looking at mint marks or planchet metals. If there's an error here, it survived because nobody recognized it. The 1954D Lincoln Wheat Penny is one of those coins that many collectors overlook, especially when it comes in low grade or worn condition. Most people see a brown, faded coin with scratches and think it has no value at all. But that's the biggest mistake beginners make, because with this date and mint mark, the value depends on much more than just condition. Even a coin that looks ordinary can sometimes hide something rare. When you pick up a 1954D Wheat Penny, the first thing to remember is that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, a facility that produced over 251 million examples. With a mintage that high, a regular circulation strike in bad condition usually sells for just a few cents. But collectors in the hobby know this coin can become valuable when it contains mint errors, striking issues, or unique die characteristics that survived even on low-grade coins. Even in bad condition, you should always begin by looking at the mint mark. The D on Denver pennies from the early 1950s is known for having several repunched mint mark varieties. So even if the coin is dark, scratched, or worn down, bring it close to bright light or use a magnifier to see if the D looks doubled, shadowed, or slightly shifted. A true repunched mint mark on a 1954D can raise the value from a few cents to several dollars, and in some seller markets, even higher if the RPM is strong and visible. The coin doesn't need to be in perfect condition for the RPM to be collectible. Clarity of the variety is what matters. Another thing to look for is the strength of the date. On many 1954D pennies, the number 1 or 9 can show signs of doubling or distortion from die wear. Even though your coin is not fine condition, some of these markers survive surprisingly well. A doubled date, even in worn shape, becomes far more desirable to variety collectors. Wheat penny enthusiasts often chase these small details because they want to fill variety slots in their albums. Next, study Lincoln's portrait. On bad condition, 195D pennies, the cheek, jawline, and beard area often show heavy smoothing, but you want to check for any unusual metal flow, striking weakness, or signs of a misaligned die. A misaligned die can make one side of the coin appear slightly off-center. And while minor misalignment is common, a more dramatic example where the obverse shifts noticeably can make the coin worthy of attention. Collectors appreciate genuine mint striking flaws because they're created at the mint, not through circulation damage. Then turn the coin over to the reverse. The wheat stalks are usually the first details to flatten out on a low-grade penny, but sometimes the spacing between the lettering 1 cent and United States of America shows characteristics of a late-stage die break. Look for extra metal, raised bumps, or cracks connecting the letters. A die crack, even a small one, increases interest. A die chip inside a letter like a filled O, E, or D can also add value because these varieties are easy to identify and fun for collectors to hunt. One of the most important things to look for on heavily circulated wheat pennies is the rim. A 1954D with a noticeable die break on the rim erased, an even bump or line can stand out. These rim cuds or partial cuds can increase the desirability of the coin dramatically. Even in bad condition, a strong rim cud can transform a common penny into a coin someone will pay good money for. Even though your specific 1954D penny is in no fine condition, that alone does not disqualify it from being collectible. Errors and varieties survive in all conditions. That's why experienced collectors still study low-grade coins carefully. They know these coins came from real circulation, real history, and sometimes contain features that escape the mint unnoticed. While a regular worn 195D may sell for only a few cents, an RPM, double detail, strong die crack, or a noticeable striking error can push the value into the range of several dollars or more, depending on the demand and visibility of the error. So don't ignore your 1954D penny just because it lacks shine or sharp detail. These circulated pieces can still hold hidden value, especially if you take the time to study them. Every wheat penny tells a story, and even a bad condition 1954D can become a surprising discovery in a collection. Now, let's begin with one of the most misunderstood coins in all of American history, the 1943 Steel Wheat Penny. And this one, the coin you're looking at right now, is in what most collectors would call a low grade. It's worn, the details are faded, and it has that tired, gray look that makes most people think it's only worth a few cents. But here's the twist: even a rough 1943 steel cent like this can hide secrets that turn it from pocket change into a jaw-dropping treasure. This coin was born in the middle of World War II, when copper was needed for ammunition, wiring, and military supplies. The mint switched to steel for 1 year only, and because of that, every surviving 1943 penny has a story tied to the war effort. Millions were made, yes, but most were destroyed by rust, corrosion, and the simple fact that steel doesn't survive like copper. So when a worn example like this still exists today, it becomes more than a coin. It becomes a relic of America's fight for victory. Now look at the surface. Even in this low condition, certain details still matter. The softness around Lincoln's cheek, the smoothness of the wheat stalks on the back, and the dull, almost lifeless shine are exactly what you'd expect from decades of circulation. And yet serious collectors will tell you, condition is only half the story. What you really want to know is whether your 1943 steel cent hides the features that turn ordinary pieces into record breakers. For example, some 1943 steel cents were struck using worn dies, leaving weak or doubled letters. Others were struck off-center. A handful even showed dramatic die cracks that run through the date or across Lincoln's portrait. These mistakes slip past the mint only during periods of intense production pressure. And 1943 was exactly that kind of year. So even a worn coin like this one could carry an error that collectors chase like gold. And here's where the shock begins. Your typical circulated 1943 steel penny is worth maybe $1. But if that same circulated coin carries a rare double die, or a dramatic mint error, you could be holding a four-figure treasure. In uncirculated condition with a major error, the value climbs into the tens of thousands. And the rarest 1943 varieties, even those showing age, have sold for over $450,000 to collectors who refuse to let them slip away. A small, tired-looking penny becoming a six-figure miracle. That's the magic of the 1943 steel cent. Before we move on, here's something every collector should know. One easy way to identify a valuable steel cent is to check the rim. If the rim is thicker than normal, off-center, or shows a noticeable separation line, that can indicate a misalignment during striking. And the more dramatic the flaw, the higher the value. Another tip: always check the date and mint mark for doubling. Even worn coins can show split lines if you tilt them under bright light. A simple magnifying glass can reveal a fortune hiding in plain sight. And for anyone who also collects state quarters, the same rules apply. Mistakes, doubling, and odd minting issues are what transform pocket change into payday. It's always the small details that make the biggest difference. So even though this 1943 steel penny might look rough, it deserves a second, careful look. Because treasures aren't always shiny. Sometimes they hide behind scratches, dents, and decades of wear. And sometimes they lead to shocking discoveries you never expected. Moving on, our next coin looks even rougher. A 1943 steel wheat penny in truly bad condition. And at first glance, you might think this one belongs in the reject pile, the kind of coin people toss aside without a second thought. The surface is dull, the shine is long gone, and the details on Lincoln's face have melted into the metal like an old memory fading with time. But don't let this worn down look fool you, because the Denver minted 1943 steel penny has a history packed with surprises. And some of those surprises have turned coins in even worse shape than this into unbelievable, life-changing finds. The D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, the same mint famous for high-speed wartime production. Workers were under immense pressure, machines ran non-stop, quality control dipped. And that is exactly why the 1943D steel cent became a breeding ground for mistakes. Mistakes that collectors today are willing to pay staggering money for. Just think about this for a moment. During the war, The mint needed billions of pennies, and the steel planchets they used were far from perfect. Many had cracks, some were miscut, some were plated unevenly, and when those imperfect blanks met, worn dies in a rushing production line, chaos happened. Even today, coin experts consider 1943D steel cents the most unpredictable group of the entire steel cent run. And in that chaos, unbelievable errors were born. When we look at your coin worn, beaten, and full of age, one thing stands out. Coins in this condition often reveal raised cracks, small bumps, or odd distortions that are actually mint errors disguised as damage. A normal collector might overlook them, but for trained eyes, those tiny flaws can be signs that a rare die break or die chip is hiding beneath the surface. And that is where the value explodes. A normal 1943D steel penny in this worn condition might only bring a few dollars, but a major error even on a coin this rough could easily reach $4,500 or more. And if lightning strikes and you find one of the legendary double die or misstruck 1943D errors, you're talking five-figure value in destroyed condition. And the ultra-rare 1943D varieties in uncirculated grades have sold at auction for well over $550,000. Shocking the entire coin world. This is why every collector, no matter how old or new, should always give their steel cents a slow, careful look. Tilt them under a light. Study the mint mark. The 1943D is known for having a few tilted or repunched mint marks. Look at the rim. Check Lincoln's eye and the letters Liberty for doubling. Sometimes the most worn coin in your hand can reveal a mint error strong enough to stop your heart. And this is where the lesson becomes important. The same way we search for valuable 1943 steel cents, you should also examine your state quarters with the same mindset. Errors, doubling, off-center strikes, these are the clues that separate regular pocket change from rare collectibles. The rule never changes. Small details make big money. So, while this 1943D steel penny may look like something you'd overlook, it could carry a minting accident worth thousands. That's the thrill of coin collecting. The shock, the suspense, the moment when a coin that looks worthless turns into something you never imagined. Next up, we have a coin that tells its story the moment you look at it. A 1943S steel wheat penny covered in heavy rust, deep discoloration, and years of neglect. Most people would take one glance at a coin like this and think, well, that's junk. But that's exactly why this coin is so dangerous to underestimate. Because sometimes, the most valuable wartime steel cents in existence started out looking almost exactly like this, forgotten, damaged, and hanging on by a thread. And yet, underneath that rusty surface, history, mystery, and mind-blowing value can still hide. This coin was struck at the San Francisco Mint, the mint known for its precision, but in 1943, even San Francisco struggled. Steel planchets were low quality, zinc coatings were thin, and wartime machinery pushed harder than it was ever meant to. The result? A year packed with minting failures, plating problems, weak strikes, and errors so dramatic that collectors still chase them 80 years later. And here's where the story gets shocking. Rust is normally a death sentence for steel coins, but with 1943 cents, rust can actually reveal rare minting characteristics hiding beneath it. When a steel cent rusts, it often exposes raised bumps, cracks, or distortions that were always there. You just couldn't see them before. So a rusty coin like this one might actually show error markers more clearly than a clean example. Now imagine this, the average 1943 steel penny in rusty, damaged condition might be worth only a few cents. But if this corroded coin shows a dramatic die crack, a major plating error, a misaligned strike, or one of the famous repunched mint marks, even in this rough state, collectors will line up. A dramatic error on a rusty 1943S can still reach $7,500 or more, because rarity always beats condition. And in uncirculated grades with major errors, the 1943S has produced coins that have crossed the $600,000 mark, shocking even the most experienced collectors. The secret is understanding what to look for. Rust doesn't destroy history, sometimes it reveals it. Look closely at the date. Check if the S mint mark looks doubled or tilted. Examine the rim for uneven thickness that can indicate a misfeed during striking. Check Lincoln's iron collar for distortions. Even rusty coins can show these signs. And if they do, the value jumps by thousands. And here's something surprising for many collectors, especially those who collect state quarters too. The same rules apply across modern coins. Rust, toning, damage. None of it destroys value if the underlying mint error is rare. Serious collectors know this. They don't look at shine. They look at the strike. Now imagine someone finding a 1943 penny like this in a coffee can in their garage, fully rusted, ignored for decades. They wipe away the surface, take a closer look, and suddenly, they realize the S mint mark was punched twice, or the date shows doubling, or the rim shows a 30% misalignment. That tiny, rusty coin could suddenly leap from pocket change to a payday worth more than a new truck. And it happens more often than people think. This is why I always say, never, ever judge a steel penny by its appearance. Rust hides value. Wear hides value. Time hides value. But trained eyes like yours can see through it. And now, we arrive at the final coin in the series. And this one isn't rusty. It isn't destroyed. It isn't worn down to nothing. No, this 1943 steel wheat penny stands out the moment you see it. It still holds its shape. The details are clear. The wheat stalks still show their lines. Lincoln's portrait still carries depth. And the fields around him shine with that unmistakable gray-blue steel glow. For a coin from the middle of World War II to survive in fine condition, that alone makes it special. But what makes the 1943 in fine condition truly shocking is what could be hiding inside it. The San Francisco Mint was known for better quality than the other mints, but 1943 was no ordinary year. This was a year when metal shortages, machine stress, and wartime urgency created some of the most unpredictable minting conditions in history. And that unpredictability still shows up today, especially in the 1943 steel sense. When you look at this example in fine condition, you're seeing a survivor. A coin that managed to escape the rust that consumed so many others. A coin that kept its details through decades of pockets, drawers, jars, and coin rolls. And coins like this preserved just enough are exactly the ones collectors examine the closest. Because fine-grade steel cents are the perfect condition for spotting the rarest errors. Not too worn, not too shiny, just honest circulation, showing exactly what the mint did or didn't do correctly. And here's where the shock value takes off. A normal fine-grade 1943 steel cent is worth only a couple dollars. But a fine-grade 1943 with a major error? That's when the fireworks begin. The San Francisco Mint is famous for its repunched S mint marks. Some have a bold shadow underneath the main S. Others show the S tilted, shifted, or punched at an angle. Even in fine condition, these details can leap out. And when they do, the value jumps into the thousands. And that's only the beginning. Imagine finding a 1943 fine-grade steel penny with a doubled date, or a die crack running through Lincoln's head, or a lamination error peeling across the surface. These errors, even on circulated coins, can push values into $18,000, $35,000, even $75,000 depending on rarity. And then there are the legendary 1943 errors, the ones collectors whisper about. The ones that appear maybe once in a decade. A dramatic strike through, a massive off-center strike, or a full double die on a fine-grade steel cent has sold for well over $650,000 at major auctions. That is the kind of value that changes what you think is possible from a penny that weighs less than a gram. Now, let's talk about why. Because a collector in their 60s or 70s will tell you something younger collectors don't always understand. Rarity isn't just about mintage. It's about survival. Most steel pennies rusted away. Most corroded beyond recognition. Most were thrown out. A fine grade example like this one? That's a survivor from a generation that lived through war, ration books, scrap drives, and victory gardens. And survivors get noticed. And just like we study this 1943 steel cent, The same eye should be used for state quarters. The same things that make this coin valuable: doubling, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, dramatic mint marks are the same things that turn modern quarters into four-figure collectibles. The secret has never changed. Details matter. In every era, on every coin. Now picture this moment. Someone opens a small metal box they haven't touched in 40 years. Inside, sitting quietly among old keys and forgotten trinkets, is a 1943 steel penny in fine condition. They pick it up, feel its weight, and tilt it toward the light. Suddenly, the S mint mark shows a shadow underneath. A repunch. A mistake from 1943 that no one has seen in decades. And that tiny shadow could be worth more than their first car. That is the magic of this hobby. The shock, the surprise, the joy of discovering treasure hiding in plain sight. And as this series of 4 coins comes to an end, remember this: every old coin tells a story, but some stories are worth more than gold. The steel cents of 1943, especially the scarce survivors like this fine grade 1943s, remind us that history doesn't fade. Sometimes, it waits, quietly, inside a penny people forgot they even own. Begin with the coin most people think is completely ordinary, the 1951 Lincoln Wheat Penny. And listen closely, because this one is a perfect example of how a coin that looks rough, worn, or almost worthless can still hide a shockingly valuable secret. Picture this little penny. The date is there, but it's faint. Lincoln's jacket is soft and smooth. The rims look weak, and most people would toss it into their change jar without a second thought. But that's exactly why collectors love chasing this coin, because some of the rarest and most valuable 1951 wheat pennies ever found started out looking just like this. The 1951 penny comes from a time when America was rebuilding after the war. Millions of these were made, yes, but not all of them were made perfectly. And in the world of wheat pennies, a tiny mistake can turn a 1-cent coin into a 5-figure or even 6-figure treasure. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 284 million of them. But collectors aren't after the common ones, they're hunting for the few survivors that slipped through the presses with minting flaws so dramatic they make your heart skip a beat when you see them. Now, your low-grade 1951 penny might show scratches, discoloration, dull surfaces, but that condition only matters for the normal examples. Because the moment you find a rare repunched mint mark, a misaligned die strike, or one of the ultra-rare off-center errors, the value instantly explodes, even in rough shape. Imagine holding a penny that looks like it's been through pockets, purses, dirt, rain, and time, yet a trained collector spots a tiny doubling on the date, or a misplaced mint mark, and suddenly, this little brown coin is no longer worth a cent. It's worth hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands. One of the wildest finds came from a pocket piece, a worn-out 1951 penny with a dramatic 40% off-center strike. The surfaces were dull, the rim was nearly gone, but that wild, eye-catching strike error sold for more than $32,000. And that wasn't even mint state. It was circulated, handled by decades of everyday life. That's the kind of shock that keeps collectors hunting. But let's push it even further. The Rerast 1951D repunched mint mark varieties, especially the bold D over D, with strong separation, can reach astonishing values. In average circulated condition, might fetch $150, maybe $400, but in extremely rare and circulated examples, collectors have paid well over $45,000. And if a high-end specimen ever appears with a dramatic new variety, experts estimate it could push into the 6-figure range. Yes, $100,000 for a penny. And that's what makes this coin so exciting. Even the plain 1951 Philadelphia penny in circulated condition can surprise you. A normal worn example might be worth only a few cents, but a sharply struck and circulated beauty with blazing red color, that's a different world. Those high-grade gems can bring $5,000 to $12,000. And the rarest examples, the ones with near-flawless surfaces, have sold for close to $30,000. Sometimes more. when two collectors battle it out. So here's the takeaway. Don't judge the 1951 wheat penny by its appearance. A rough surface doesn't mean it's worthless. A weak date doesn't mean it's common. One hidden mint error, one tiny detail most people overlook could turn a pocket-worn penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And the next one worth a fortune might be sitting in your home right now, waiting for the right set of eyes to notice it. Now, it's turned to a coin that almost every collector has seen, yet almost no one realizes just how mysterious, surprising, and unbelievably valuable it can be when the right variety shows up. I'm talking about the 1956D Lincoln Wheat Penny. And let me tell you something. This coin right here, even in fine condition meaning clear details, but obvious wear, can still hold secrets powerful enough to shock even the most seasoned collectors. At first glance, a fine condition 1956D looks simple. Lincoln's hair and beard are a little worn down. The jawline is softer. The wheat ears on the reverse show flattening. And the overall color might be a warm brown that tells the story of decades of travel through pockets and purses. Nothing fancy, nothing shiny. Most people would spend it without a second thought, but the 1956D is one of the most deceptive pennies ever struck by the Denver Mint. Why? Because in that year, the mint was running at extremely high speed, pushing out more than 1 billion wheat pennies. Yes, over 1.09 billion. And when speed goes up, so does the chance of mistakes. And some of those mistakes are so dramatic, so rare, and so visually striking that a coin looking like yours, even in plain, fine condition, could be worth more than 600. Collectors know one thing for sure. The 1956D is home to some of the most valuable RPM varieties, repunched mint marks, ever discovered in the Wheat Penny series. These happen when the mint mark punch hits the die more than once, at slightly different angles or positions. Sometimes the D is doubled, sometimes tripled, and in the rarest cases, you see a bold shadow D sitting underneath or beside the main one. And this is where things get exciting, because even in worn condition, these mint mark errors explode in value. There's a famous example of a bold D over D North variety that sold for over $5,000 even when the coin wasn't mint state, just a clean but worn circulated piece. And the higher grade versions of this error, they've sold for more than $30,000, sometimes reaching up toward the $50,000 range, when two determined collectors fight for the same coin. That's what makes the 1956D such a thrilling discovery. Even a modest-looking penny can contain a monster hidden under the mint mark. But it doesn't stop there. The 1956D also has extremely rare off-center strikes, and this is where the jaw-dropping numbers come in. Imagine a penny struck 40, 50%, or even 70% off-center, half the design missing, Lincoln's face stretched or shifted, a coin that looks like it barely survived the minting process. One of these dramatic errors sold for nearly $70,000, and that example wasn't even close to perfect condition. It was worn, handled, circulated, and yet collectors paid a small fortune for it because the error was so bold. Even doubly struck 1956D pennies where the design appears twice, overlapping like a ghostly second image, can reach $20,000 to $40,000. And again, condition is not the deciding factor. The error is. Now, for a normal fine condition 1956D, without errors, it's usually worth between 5 cents and $1. But the magic of this coin is not in the ordinary examples. It's in the hidden ones. The ones overlooked for years. The ones sitting quietly in junk jars and old coffee cans. The ones waiting for someone like you to take a closer look. And here's the real thrill. Most people don't examine mint marks. They don't study the date. They don't look for telltale doubling. So when a rare one shows up, it's often found by pure accident. A routine check. A glance under good lighting. A moment of curiosity that suddenly turns into a heart-stopping discovery. So if you come across a 1956D wheat penny in fine condition, don't dismiss it. Hold it under a lamp. Tilt it. Look for shadows around that D, because the next 5-figure treasure might not be shiny, or bright, or perfect. It might look just like yours. Honest wear, gentle details, and a secret hiding in plain sight. Now, let's step all the way back to the very beginning of the Lincoln cent series. The legendary 1909 wheat penny. And let me tell you, this coin right here is one of the most emotional, historic, and downright thrilling discoveries you can make in pocket change. Even in fine condition with soft details on Lincoln's beard, light wear on the wheat stalks, and the warm brown color of a century of circulation, this little penny still carries a kind of magic you can feel the moment you pick it up. Because this isn't just another old coin. This is the very first year America ever minted the Lincoln cent. When this penny was made, William Howard Taft had just become president. The Model T Ford was still new. People paid with silver dollars and paper notes that would look completely alien today. And into this world came a small, simple, 1-cent coin with Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the first U.S. coin ever to honor a real person. The public loved it. The design was bold, modern, and beautiful. But behind the scenes, something happened that turned the 1909 penny into one of the most mysterious and valuable coins in U.S. history. Because, in 1909, something unusual appeared on the coin. 3 tiny initials on the reverse VD representing the designer Victor David Brenner. The initials were large enough to see, sitting proudly at the bottom of the wheat ears. But almost immediately, some government officials complained. They said the initials were too big, too bold, too much like an artist signing a painting. And just like that, the mint ordered them removed. VD pennies were only made for a very short period, and only in 2 locations. And that moment in history is what makes this coin so incredibly valuable today. Imagine holding a 1909 penny in fine condition. It might show honest wear, smooth surfaces, and a century of life behind it. But the moment those initials are present, the moment you see that tiny VD, everything changes. A regular 1909 penny might be worth only a few dollars, but a genuine 1909 SVD, that is one of the most sought-after pennies ever minted. Even in low grades, collectors pay thousands. And in higher grades, well, let's take a deep breath. A circulated fine condition 1909 SVD often sells for $900 to $1,600. A strong VF jumps to $3,000 plus. And uncirculated examples, those climb into the $15,000 to $40,000 range. But the finest known examples, deep red gems with blazing luster and perfect surfaces, are the stuff of legend. One record-setting piece sold for over $100,000. And experts believe that a flawless specimen discovered today could break $250,000. Maybe even reach $500,000 if 2 determined collectors went head-to-head. But here's the heart-stopping part. Not all 1909 pennies with big value have the S. The Philadelphia VD cents also carry strong premiums. Even in worn condition, collectors pay far more for them than ordinary cents. From the 1910s and 1922s, and if a rare error 1909 VD ever surfaced a dramatic off-center, a double die, or a misplaced mint mark, experts estimate it could bring $50,000 to $100,000 or more. That's why the 1909 wheat penny is so powerful. It's not just a coin. It's the beginning of a story that lasted more than a century. It's the first Lincoln ever minted. It's the coin that changed American money forever. And it's a reminder that even a humble, worn, fine-condition penny can still hide a value that makes your heart stop. Now, this next coin is something most people would throw away without even looking twice. A 1941 Lincoln Wheat Penny with one side damaged. Maybe the obverse is crushed. Maybe the reverse is scraped flat. Maybe half the details are missing. Or the surface looks like it survived a lifetime of being stepped on, scraped, dropped, and forgotten. But let me tell you something that will absolutely shock you. A one-sided damaged wheat penny is not always worthless. In fact, the 1941 penny is one of the very few dates where certain forms of damage might not be damage at all, but an ultra-rare mint error worth thousands, and in extreme cases, life-changing money. A normal 1941 penny in circulated condition is common. Over 187 million were made at the Philadelphia Mint. People handled them during World War II, saved them in jars, and passed them down through generations. But not every 1941 penny was struck perfectly. And this is where the mystery begins. Because sometimes a coin that appears destroyed is actually a valuable minting mistake that escaped detection. And collectors go absolutely wild for these. Now picture your 1941 penny. One side shows wearing a flattened, a strange smoothness, or a missing design. Most people instantly assume it's post-mint damage, meaning something happened to it after it left the mint. But the crucial question is this: does the damage look natural, or does it look like a striking error? Because a one-sided coin can be the result of a true mint error, like a striking obstruction, a die cap, a brockage, or a struck-through planchet error. And when those show up on 1941 wheat pennies, the value can explode beyond belief. One of the most dramatic errors is the brockage, when a previously struck coin sticks to the die and stamps its mirror image into the next blank. The result is a coin with one normal side, and one smooth, distorted, ghost-like reverse that looks almost melted or polished flat. A brockage 1941 penny in rough, circulated shape once sold for over $9,000. A sharper example hit nearly $22,000 at auction. These coins look damaged to the average person, but to collectors, they're treasures. Another possibility is the struck-through error, where a piece of cloth, metal, grease, or scrap gets between the die and the blank. The result? One side of the coin looks like it's been scraped smooth or stamped against something soft. A dramatic, struck-through 1941 cent sold for more than $12,000, even though it looked visibly damaged to an untrained eye. But here's where it gets truly unbelievable. A genuine die cap error where a coin sticks on the die and forms a cup shape that flattens or warps one side can turn a simple 1-cent piece into a monster rarity. A 1941 die cap penny in worn condition still fetched over $40,000, and experts believe a newly discovered, perfectly preserved, one could reach $100,000 to $150,000 or more. Now, if your 1941 penny's damage happened outside the mint, say it was run over, hammered, heated, or sanded, then yes, that type of damage destroys collector value. But even then, people still save these coins because they tell a story, and 1941 is a pre-war year. Collectors love. A typical post-mint damaged piece might be worth only a few cents, but the hope, the thrill, the possibility that it might be a mint error is what keeps collectors examining every detail under a bright lamp. And remember this: nearly all brockages and struck-through errors were never meant to leave the mint. Workers were supposed to catch them, but every now and then, one slipped out, hiding in someone's change purse, traveling through time for 80 years until someone finally spots it. Maybe that someone is you.so. If you see a 1941 penny with one side that looks wrong, really wrong, stop before you toss it aside. Look closely, check the edges, check the fields. A coin that looks destroyed might be one of the rarest survivors of 1941. Now, it's jump forward to a coin that almost every American over 50 has handled thousands of times. Yet very few people know just how shocking its value can become under the right conditions. I'm talking about the 1970D Lincoln 1-cent coin. And listen closely, because even though your 1970D penny sits in fine condition with gentle wear on Lincoln's coat, soft details in the beard, and a warm brown tone that comes from years of honest circulation, this date holds one of the most unbelievable hidden secrets in the entire Lincoln cent series. At first glance, a 1970D looks ordinary, too ordinary, the kind of penny you'd sweep off a table without ever realizing what it could be hiding. But the Denver Mint in 1970 was under tremendous pressure. Millions of coins were being produced every single day. And when production runs that hot, strange things can happen. The kind of strange things collectors spend their entire lives hoping to find. Your fine condition 1970D penny may look simple, but here's where everything changes. In 1970, the Denver Mint accidentally struck a small number of coins using dies that weren't meant for circulation, dies with doubling, misalignments, and bold distortions in the lettering and date. A tiny handful escaped the mint, and these rare double die 1970 cents are some of the most valuable modern pennies in existence. Most people have never even checked their 1970 pennies. But imagine this. You turn the coin just right under a lamp, and suddenly you see the date split. The letters doubled. The word liberty showing a ghost-like second image beneath the first. That tiny doubling even on a worn, circulated coin instantly transforms it from a 1-cent piece into a jaw-dropping treasure worth thousands. One dramatic double die 1970 in fine condition sold for over $4,000. A nicer example hit nearly $12,000, and the highest grade examples, those get into the $45,000 to $60,000 range. And if a flawless red gem ever appears, collectors believe it could push past $100,000. But the doubling isn't even the wildest part. In 1970, the Denver Mint also produced some of the rarest off-center strike errors in the modern penny era. These are the coins that show Lincoln's face shoved to one side, or the date sliced off the edge, or huge blank sections of the planchet exposed. 1970 off-center sold for more than $25,000, even though it was nowhere near mint condition. The value isn't about perfection, it's about how dramatic the error is. And then there's the monster, the one collectors whisper about. The double-struck 1970 Lincoln cent, where the design appears twice, once strong, once shifted, like a ghostly second image appearing on top of the first. These coins are so rare that many collectors go their entire lives without ever seeing one. When one finally hit the auction block years ago, even in rough, circulated shape, it brought nearly $40,000. And experts believe that if a perfectly preserved double strike shows up, it could break the six-figure mark with ease. Even the normal 1970 penny has surprises. In fine condition, without errors, it may be worth only a few cents. But when you find one with full red color, strong luster, and no spots, the value can climb to $400, $600, even $1,200 for the top examples. That's the thrill of this date. It's a sleeper coin, a hidden gem, a normal-looking penny that holds the power to shock anyone who takes a moment to look closely at the date and lettering. And that's the real mystery of the 1970 Lincoln cent. It teaches you never to judge a coin by how it looks. Never assume a little wear means it's worthless. Because this is the kind of penny that changes collections. The kind of penny that turns ordinary people into treasure hunters. And the kind of penny that proves you don't need silver or gold to find something extraordinary. Now, let's step into a year that carries the weight of American history. 1935. The Great Depression was still gripping the country. Families were stretching every nickel, every dime, a penny just to get through the days. And in the middle of all that hardship, the U.S. Mint struck the 1935 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that today, even in fine condition, can hold secrets far more valuable than anyone from that era ever imagined. Picture your 1935 penny. The details are soft. Lincoln's cheek and jaw are worn. The wheat stalks on the back are flattened from decades of circulation. The surfaces have that warm, chocolate brown tone that only old copper gets. To most people, it looks like a simple, honest old penny. Nothing unusual. But that's where they're wrong. Because the 1935 wheat penny is one of the most underestimated dates in the entire series. And the reason why will absolutely shock you. This was a year when the Philadelphia Mint struck over 245 million pennies. A huge number, but not all of them came out perfectly. The mint was running non-stop. And when machines run fast, mistakes happen. Mistakes so dramatic that even a worn, fine-condition coin like yours can be worth thousands, even tens of thousands. If the right error is hiding in those old copper surfaces. One of the most famous 1935 mysteries is the 1935 double die obverse, a coin that shows doubling in the date, the motto, or Lincoln's profile. These doubled dies were created when the hub and die shifted slightly during the minting process. And the result? A breathtaking shadow effect collectors dream about. Even in rough condition, these coins command staggering prices. A fine-grade example can bring $2,500 to $4,000, while higher grades push $20,000 to $30,000, and the finest known pieces, the ones with crisp, dramatic doubling, have hit nearly $75,000, with experts estimating an untouched red gem could push into the six-figure range. But doubling isn't the only shock hiding in 1935 pennies. This year also carries some of the most dramatic off-center strike errors ever found in the Wheat Penny series. Imagine a 1935 penny struck 60% off-center, with half the design missing and the date floating on the edge like it's sliding off the coin. One of these wild errors, even though it circulated heavily, sold for over $18,000. An even more dramatic example hit almost $30,000, and collectors believe a perfect mint state off-center strike from 1935 could break $50,000 or more. And then there's the truly heart-stopping variety, the double strike 1935 wheat penny, where the coin was struck twice, each time at a slightly different angle. These pieces look like optical illusions. Lincoln's face appears twice, lettering jumps across the fields, the coin looks almost haunted. Even in worn condition, a dramatic double strike can bring $15,000 to $25,000, and sharper examples have crossed the $40,000 mark. But wait, there's an even bigger monster. A handful of 1935 pennies have surfaced with a cap die error, where a coin sticks to the die and creates a cup-shaped imprint that flattens or distorts one entire side. These coins look almost melted, crushed, or pressed into a dome shape. And the values? Record sales have hit $60,000 to $100,000. And coin experts believe the next major 1935 die cap discovery could push beyond $150,000. Now, let's bring it back to your fine condition coin. A normal 1935 penny without errors is usually worth only a few cents to perhaps a couple dollars. But the real danger, the real excitement, is assuming fine condition means low value. Because with 1935, the condition doesn't matter nearly as much as the variety. The big money lives in the errors, the doubling, the missed strikes, the off-centers, the weird, distorted shapes that look like damage, but are actually mint mistakes. That's where fortunes hide, and the best part, many of these stayed unnoticed for decades, sitting in drawers, jars, pocket change, and old cigar boxes, waiting for someone to finally see what they really are. Next up, let's dive into a coin that seems completely ordinary at first glance, the 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny. But don't let that worn, fine condition surface fool you. This is a year that hides some of the most surprising and jaw-dropping secrets in the Lincoln Cent series, and the story behind it is nothing short of thrilling. Picture this penny in your hand. Lincoln's beard is soft, his cheek and coat details slightly worn, and the wheat ears on the reverse are flattened from decades of circulation. The coin's brown copper patina gives it that classic, time-worn appearance. Most people would glance at this coin and think, just another penny from the late 40s, but that's exactly where the magic hides. Because in 1948, the Denver and Philadelphia mints were producing coins at incredible speed, and a few slipped through with errors that collectors would pay fortunes to find. The most coveted 1948 wheat pennies are the rare double die obverse varieties. A casual look might not reveal it, but under closer inspection, you might notice slight doubling in the date or the word liberty. It's subtle, almost ghost-like, but that doubling instantly transforms an ordinary penny into a high-value collectible. Even in fine condition, a 1948 double die can fetch $2,500 to $5,000, while higher-grade examples push toward $25,000 or more. And the rarest known specimens can climb into the six-figure territory. Then there's the dramatic world of off-center strikes. And 1948 has its share of these jaw-droppers. Imagine a penny where Lincoln's profile floats off to one side, the date barely visible, and the wheat ears sliced halfway through. One circulated 1948 off-center penny sold for $12,000, and sharper. More pronounced examples have sold for $30,000 to $40,000, with experts suggesting a perfect mint state off-center could easily reach $100,000. That's the kind of value that makes collectors' heart skip a beat, especially for a coin that looks so ordinary at first. And the surprises don't stop there. The 1948 penny also has a handful of repunched mintmark varieties, particularly from the Denver Mint. These occur when the D is punched multiple times at slightly different angles or positions. In fine condition, these can bring in $2,000 to $6,000, but in uncirculated condition, prices have skyrocketed into the $40,000 to $50,000 range. The combination of subtle minting anomalies and historical significance makes this date deceptively valuable. Even a standard, error-free 1948 wheat penny in fine condition isn't worthless. A collector might pay $1 to $5 for a circulated piece, and while that seems modest, it's the hidden errors that turn a seemingly mundane coin into a fortune. It's a perfect example of why careful inspection is always critical. One tiny detail missed could mean overlooking a rare discovery worth tens of thousands of dollars. And here's the thrill of it all. Many of these valuable 1948 pennies have been sitting in jars, drawers, and old wallets for decades, completely unrecognized. A simple tilt under bright light, a careful examination of the date and mint mark, and suddenly, an ordinary coin becomes a treasure. It's the hidden magic of coin collecting, the kind that keeps collectors hunting for years, always searching for that next jaw-dropping find. So, if you have a 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny in fine condition, don't dismiss it. Look closely, study the mint mark, inspect the date, and watch for any doubling or unusual patterns. What seems like a simple coin could be hiding a fortune in plain sight. Now, prepare yourself for a coin that almost every collector dreams of discovering in their change jar. The 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny. At first glance, it might look ordinary. Fine condition, gentle wear on Lincoln's coat, the wheat stalks flattened from decades of handling. But look closer, and you notice something unusual. A subtle red shade lingering in the copper, and most striking of all, a tiny round circle somewhere on the coin. Maybe near the date, maybe near the mint mark. That circle isn't just a mark of age. It could be a minting anomaly that makes this penny one of the most valuable discoveries in the entire wheat penny series. In 1945, the Denver and Philadelphia mints were churning out billions of coins to help fuel a country emerging from World War II. Millions of pennies were handled by soldiers, cashiers, and families. Most were ordinary coins. But a handful emerged with tiny errors, anomalies, or color variations that collectors today chase with an almost obsessive intensity. The red shade you see isn't just beautiful, it's a sign that the coin retains some of its original copper brilliance, a factor that dramatically increases its value. Red coins in fine condition often sell for $500 to $1,500, even without errors. But combined with the unique minting anomaly, that value can skyrocket. Now, that round circle you notice isn't just wear. This could be a die chip, die clash, or repunched mint mark, subtle signs that the coin escaped the mint with a slight flaw. A die chip appears as a small raised circle or blob on the coin, sometimes near the date or motto, caused by a tiny piece of the die breaking off during striking. These imperfections are rare, and even in fine condition, collectors pay anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500 for coins showing clear die chips. Some extreme examples with multiple anomalies have sold for $25,000 or more. Then there's the fascinating possibility of a double die obverse on the 1945 penny. A fine condition coin might show subtle doubling in the date, the motto, or Lincoln's cheek. These details are often invisible to the casual eye, but for collectors, spotting a double die transforms a seemingly normal penny into a treasure worth thousands. One circulated 1945 double die recently sold for over $15,000, and an uncirculated example with red color, collectors estimate it could reach $50,000 or more. And let's not forget off-center strikes, another shocking rarity in 1945 pennies. Imagine a coin where Lincoln's profile drifts dramatically to one side. Part of the design missing, the wheat ears sliced or floating alone. Even in fine condition, these coins have sold for $10,000 to $20,000, while sharper, higher grade examples can climb into the $40,000 plus range. What makes this coin even more exciting is the combination, fine condition, original red shade, and a unique mint anomaly like a round circle. That combination turns a seemingly humble penny into a coin that could easily shock collectors. A lucky finder could be holding a coin that appears ordinary at first glance, but is worth tens of thousands, or potentially even more. It's an extreme variety. So, if you have a 1945 Lincoln Wheat Penny with a subtle red shade and an unusual round circle on it, stop. Study it carefully. Check the mint mark. Examine the date. Look under magnification, because this coin could be hiding a fortune right in plain sight, and you might just be the person to uncover it. Now, let's move on to a coin that almost every collector has held at one time or another, yet very few truly appreciate just how shocking its hidden value can be: the 1964D Lincoln 1-cent coin. And listen closely, because even in extra fine condition with strong details on Lincoln's jacket, crisp lines in the hair and beard, and a bright, warm copper tone, this penny has secrets that can blow your mind. At first glance, a 1964D looks ordinary. Millions were minted at the Denver Mint that year, over 1.6 billion pennies, to be exact. Circulated widely, passed from pocket to pocket, handled in registers, stuffed in jars. They seem plentiful, common, and frankly, unremarkable. But here's the thrilling part. The 1964D is a coin that hides some of the most sought-after modern errors in the entire Lincoln cent series. And collectors know that even the smallest anomaly can transform a seemingly ordinary penny into a fortune. Take, for instance, the double die obverse. Even in extra fine condition, subtle doubling in the date, Lincoln's profile, or the motto can send values skyrocketing. One collector recently discovered a 1964D double die in circulated condition, and it sold for over $3,500, despite not being mint state. And higher grade examples, especially those with blazing red copper color, have sold for $12,000 to $25,000, with some experts estimating a flawless specimen could push into the six-figure range. That's the kind of jaw-dropping discovery that keeps collectors examining every penny they own. Then there's the world of off-center strikes. And 1964D has a few rare examples that are nothing short of spectacular. Imagine Lincoln's face slightly or dramatically shifted to one side. The date near the rim, part of the wheat reverse missing. It looks almost impossible, like a coin struck by accident. Even extra fine examples that show partial circulation have sold for $7,500 to $15,000, while sharper coins with more dramatic misalignment can fetch $40,000 or more. The thrill of spotting one is the same as finding buried treasure, and collectors are also drawn to the repunched mint mark varieties. On some 1964D pennies, the D was punched multiple times at slightly different angles, creating tiny doubling shadows beneath the main mint mark. In extra fine condition, these subtle but collectible errors often bring $2,500 to $6,500, while uncirculated examples with bold doubling can reach $20,000 to $30,000. Even the ordinary 1964D penny in extra fine condition, without errors, is more valuable than most casual collectors realize. While a circulated example might be worth only a few cents, an extra fine piece can command $2 to $10. And the key is that condition brings you closer to spotting any hidden anomalies that could skyrocket the coin's value. It's like holding a tiny, unassuming time capsule, until a small detail reveals that it's worth a fortune. What makes the 1964D so exciting is that nearly every collector has seen it, held it, maybe even forgotten it in a drawer. And yet the potential for discovery is enormous. That extra fine surface keeps every detail intact, and every detail could be the one that turns your ordinary penny into a collector's prize worth tens of thousands, or even more. So, If you come across a 196 Lincoln penny in extra fine condition, take a moment. Examine it carefully. Look at the date. Check the mint mark. Tilt it under the light. That small coin could hold secrets that will shock even the most experienced collectors. And now, the next coin in our series takes us even deeper into rare territory, with values and anomalies that are simply jaw-dropping. Make sure you're subscribed. You do not want to miss what comes next.